Hey guys, welcome to Mompreneur Space live show podcast where I interview inspiring moms from all around the world so that you can learn how they overcome their challenges and struggles as mompreneur. I'm your host Kenneth Chu, and today's guest is none other than Natalia Rachel, who is a speaker, educator, and a trauma therapist. In this episode, we will be talking about mental health, motherhood, and me, and also how she overcome her challenges and struggles. So without further ado, let me welcome Natalia. Hi, Natalia.
Hi, Kenneth. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you. So, how's your day so far? I know that it has been a long day for you.
It has been a long day, but it's been a good day. How about yours?
I'm good. So excited to really have you onto the show finally. And before we start, right, there's a tradition that every guest get to post the question of the day out to the audience and also to the next guest before we can kickstart with the show. So, are you ready to receive the question of the day posted by the previous guest before we can officially start the show?
I'm ready.
All right. So the question of the day from the previous guest is a bit long. So let me know if you can get it. So the question of the day posted by the previous guest is: would you like to live in the world where human life is at the highest value in the creative society? So it's a bit long. Let me repeat again. Would you like to live in the world where humans' life is at the highest value in the creative society? So maybe a bit background about the creative society, because the previous guest, she talked about we are living in a consumer society where everything is about money, everything is about selling and getting money for your own benefit. And when she talked about creative society, is like everybody is caring for one another. There's no agenda, there's no intention. Everybody is like, we are living in the village, everybody care for each other, everybody lending a hand, helping each other like family members. So this is like the creative society they are working towards too. So she would like to ask you, what would you like to live in the world where humans' life is at the highest value in the creative society? All right, you got a question?
Yeah, I think I'd love to live in that world if there was really good communication and boundaries. Then it would be a very beautiful world to live in.
Okay, so you spend some time to think about it. While I let me just check our audio, and I'll come back to you. Then you can just share with us with a good answer for this. Okay, so let me just do a check first, and I'll come back. All right. Okay, good. I can hear you loud and clear. And also, are you ready to give us the answer to the question of the day, which is: would you like to live in the world where humans' life is at the highest value in the creative society, and why?
I think I would like to live in a world where there was this sense of community and connection and equality, as long as there was really clear communication and boundaries available. I think being able to ask for what we need and say no is a really essential piece of creating a world like that where harmony is really possible, and so that balance can really exist. So yes, I think that would be a really beautiful world. I don't know if it'll be one that we reach in this lifetime, but it's a nice idea.
Yeah, thank you very much. And now we can officially kickstart the show. And I like the part where you talk about harmony, like really harmony and balance. This is really ideal, and I believe that all of us are working towards that. So maybe before we start, right, you can do a short introduction of yourself. Where are you from, and currently what are you doing now, and how many children you have, so that for the audience that are seeing you for the first time, they have a bit of background about you.
Sure. Well, my name's Natalia Rachel. I'm originally from Australia, but I live in Singapore and I've been here for nearly 5 years now. I'm the founder of Illuminate, and I'm a speaker, educator, and therapist. And I'm a mama of 2 beautiful children, Violetta, who's 8, and Harlan, who'll be 7 in a couple of weeks' time.
Wow. Good. So what were you doing previously before you start your own company?
So before I started this company, I was working as a therapist here in Singapore. And for many reasons, I was inspired to start this business and grow it. But I wasn't always a therapist. So actually my first career before I had children was in brand and marketing and copywriting. And I had a business back in Australia. But when I had my first child, my daughter, it didn't feel like that's where I wanted to put my focus. And so their early years were about them. And they were also about me going on a pretty deep healing journey. And it was my healing journey that then inspired me to retrain as a therapist, and also what then inspired me to go on and try and bring more healing to more people by creating Illum Health.
Wow. So it's really a very drastic change, right? From branding, marketing, and suddenly you had a like 180 degrees change and into healing, which is because from what, because I'm also doing branding and marketing, it's a very hectic, a lot of, you will need to digest and use a lot of brain juice, and suddenly you went to healing and not chill. I do not know. So what makes that change? Were you like having was it too hectic for you, burnout in your corporate world? That's why that you decided to slow it down?
No. However, before I started my own business in sort of marketing, branding, writing, I did have deep burnout in corporate world, but that was before being a mother. So I shifted into creating my own little business. But when my daughter was born, I just wanted to love her. And so all of the brand and the business just felt meaningless. And I was not well when she was born, and I only had so much energy, and I wanted to give it to her.
Wow.
I didn't want to give it to my business. So I stopped, and it was a big turnaround, because actually before she was born, I said, I'm just going to take 6 weeks off and I'll be back working full time and growing this business. And I was so sure of myself. But the moment I saw her, I didn't want to do that. And then I thought that I would go back, and I did a little bit of writing. But actually, after my second child was born, my beautiful boy, I became very, very sick, really, really sick. And so that caused this sort of stop in my life. And it took me on a really deep healing journey of my own. I had to figure out how to live in balance and harmony, which are words that came up before. I had to figure out how to be here and how to look after myself and how to be a mum. And I think once I figured that out, then I had to figure out, well, now how do I add in a business? Because I have a very entrepreneurial spirit, but this time the business was, an extension of my healing journey and the desire to bring healing to more people.
I like the part where you were a women entrepreneur, and because of motherhood, your business model start to change, and the business that you are in shifted into something that is aligned with your life, your health, your healing, and from that you see that there's an extension that you could reach out, because you have learned so much, you have healed yourself. At the same time, you realize that this is an opportunity to help others who were in your shoes before. Is that so? Is that what you saw? And that's why you decided, other than healing yourself, you decided to do this extension?
Yes, I think through my own healing journey, I had all these moments of epiphany where I was like, oh, that's why I'm like this or like this. I understand so much more deeply. And I just wanted to study. I just had a thirst for it. And so I started studying, and I wasn't really sure at the time what the intention, like where it would lead me. But the moment I got my first qualification, which was as a hypnotherapist, I started getting a line of people interested to see me, because I think they'd been watching my own healing journey, which was quite a profound, complex journey. So then there were clients, and before I knew it, I was a sought after therapist. And then I realized, hey, one therapist can't help everybody. Now, how can I create a business model where a lot more people can be supported? And so over time, that's grown to, having a range of therapists, some of them that I train myself, and also starting to teach, and then also creating content and online courses too. So I'm trying to find different ways, different pillars and methods that people can be supported in their journey of healing and self-discovery and growth.
Wow. It just started from your thirst or your hunger for learning more about therapy and healing, and you started with hypnotherapy, and it spin off to something that you basically, there's a demand that was out there. And I guess your marketing and branding background as a profession back then does help in your I would say your healing career, right? Or your healing business.
Absolutely. I think I have a good handle on words. So words, being able to write about yourself and talk about yourself in the right words is really helpful. And earlier you said, wow, marketing and branding is so different from therapy. In some ways, yes, but in some ways, no, because it's all about understanding humans, isn't it? And the psyche and what makes people tick. So in that sense, there's a deep connection. So I often see parallels.
So is it because like you talk about hypnotherapy, you also understand the different conscious level of human beings, and that's where it makes your marketing strategy tick? Is that one of the factors that help you?
I guess so. I don't really think of myself as marketing when I'm healing, but I do think that marketing is a form of hypnotherapy, which is really interesting. But I think in this case, I'm using my words and my intention to support people to heal and grow and thrive, not to buy something. So that's the main difference. There's a strong, I guess, desire to impact.
Yeah. I totally agree with you, because when you come from that space, healing space, you are helping and serving people, which should be the way, so that you can influence and inspire people with your words, and that's where they will come and check it out. And if you are coming from your own story, coming from your own experience, I think it will resonate with them, because it's storytelling, right? So for marketers, marketing is about storytelling. So why in the space of the trauma-informed culture that you have shared with me? So why in that space? Maybe you can share more about what do you mean by trauma-informed culture?
Okay, so one of the pillars of my brand Illuma is that we do corporate mental health programs and consulting, so culture transformation. And one of the things I'm really passionate is bringing a trauma-informed approach. So many of us have experienced trauma, and when we have unresolved trauma, it really changes the way we experience the world, and it also changes the way we relate to each other. And when we look through the lens of trauma, we can learn to develop a much greater degree of empathy, so to be able to understand other people's experiences, and also to start to engage very compassionately. So something, for example, in a workplace is that people get called toxic if they're acting badly, bad behavior. But I really don't like the word toxic. Most toxic behavior actually comes from somebody that's actually feeling a sense of threat. And so if we bring this trauma-informed lens to understand, well, why is somebody behaving a certain way, then we can engage in a way that starts to promote them to feel safe. So when we talk about trauma-informed culture, we're really starting to explore the why behind everyone's experiences and develop ways that we can live and relate to each other that promote harmony and safety.
Wow, because when you talk about the toxic thing, right, I've been wondering, because I was from one of my employer, I shall not name, very established corporation, and it was very toxic. And you talk about like why are they spreading toxic, or even having that toxic culture? It comes from what you mentioned, what had caused them to be that, right? The negativity. Maybe they have some traumatic experience, and now they are imposing it or spreading it. So when you talk about that, and you talk about you do a lot of corporate trainings and introduce this trauma-informed culture, is it very much needed in the human resource, I would say, space?
I believe it's really needed. It's a very new realm. So some people think, oh, trauma, I don't want to bring trauma-informed anything to work. Trauma is a dirty word. But yes, I think it is really needed, because often what happens with, I guess, toxic culture is that somebody is being toxic and engaging from a place of threat, and we usually respond either with more threat, so we'll threaten them, or we'll just disconnect and ignore it. And either way, the toxicity spreads. Trauma and threat spread like wildfire. So when we bring a trauma-informed approach, we start to understand what's going on, and we engage not only with empathy and compassion, but with boundaries and accountability, which is often something that's lacking in many relationships, not just workplaces. So there are all these moving pieces. The pillars of the work that we do in corporations are empathy, compassion, vulnerability, accountability, and respect.
And these are the, what do you call them, values? Are they really much values?
They are values. I think they are the things that we need in order to relate to each other beautifully. And I believe that if we could learn to relate to each other from these values or pillars, the world would be a very different place.
And this is something that why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I saw that, like you talk about compassion, empathy, and for me, another thing which I feel that even for mothers who are entrepreneurs like you guys are filled with love, compassion, and empathy, and love, and this is something that I think this will help the world to be balanced, and like I like the part where you talk about harmony. I guess I believe that love, compassion, and empathy basically brings that harmony together. We are not harming each other, we are loving each other, we're helping each other in that space of love, compassion, and empathy. And that's where I believe, like, even for mothers, even for women, are going to be change maker of the new economy. So having said that, was it hard to introduce this to corporates, because especially in Singapore, of the Asian culture, because of the stigma behind, or about trauma, about all this bad experience, about this toxic, because maybe the corporation might not believe or might not think that they are having this toxic culture. So how was it a difficult thing for you?
I mean, yes, and it still is. You know, it is a little bit of a battle, but rather than consider it a battle, I just let the work speak for itself. So usually what happens is someone either sees me speak or reads some of my content or engages with me in one-on-one work, and then there's this moment of, oh yeah, this totally makes sense, now we're going to bring it on. So I always think when we're trying to create change in the world, we cannot force it. You know, we really have to create resonance with dynamics, and it's only when someone comes to me and says, Natalia, we're ready for this, we're in, we want to do it, let's do it together, that's when we can go in and make a change. So I'm never going to force this work on anyone, because it goes completely against the principles of everything that I want to introduce.
Yeah, and you say one thing is they have to get it, they have to understand it, and they have to buy the idea that they can resonate and it makes sense. And that's where you talk about, you are also a speaker, you talk about topics that is related to all this. So what makes you want to start this journey, while maybe most mom may not want to go into this space? Because especially in Singapore, because of our high standard of living, a lot of moms will want to find maybe a job that is more stable, rather than step into entrepreneurship, and furthermore in this space of healing. What makes you want to start this?
Well, I guess I've wanted to be an entrepreneur. I have been an entrepreneur since my mid-20s, so this is my third business. So I have that spirit. I want to create and grow. I have that energy in me, and I think some people have it and some people don't, and there's no good or bad. So I'm following who I am. In terms of healing, I guess when I started, there was just this line out the door, and people want it and they need it. The world needs all the healing it can get right now. So I want to support that to happen. And from a very personal place, like I briefly mentioned, I was very sick for a really long time, and I experienced a lot of trauma. And I think that had there been a business like mine back then, or had there been people speaking about these topics, my life would have taken a very different turn. So I almost feel like it's a responsibility or a duty to share what I know. So I'm very, very purpose driven.
Yeah, do you think that it would be better if you are back in Australia, if you were to pursue this, than in Singapore, because the culture is really different, and I would say people might not be that receptive in Singapore than in Australia?
You know, I can't really answer that question. My whole career as a therapist and as a founder in the mental health and trauma space has been here in Singapore, and it's been growing beautifully. So it has been well received, and I think I've been in just the right place at just the right time. Singapore has been the most supportive space to be a mompreneur, because there is a good lifestyle here. It's safe. I have help in my home. I didn't have any of these things in Australia. So if I had been back in Australia, I would not have had the support and the freedom that I needed to go on this journey. So I actually think this has been the best place to start.
Wow. You just make me realize that things happen for a reason, and you are just at this space to do this business that will help even more people, because you recognize that. And just now before we start, right, you talk about this hustle culture that we have, and it's even much needed for everyone to be informed about the trauma, or even having this balance, this healing and all this stuff. So what do you think that is the bigger challenge for working moms in Singapore?
I mean, balance. We all have only so much energy. So as an entrepreneur, we have human babies and business babies. And so we need to split our energy. And I think that can be really hard. I also think it's hard sometimes having to choose business over children, which happens. So, for example, sometimes I can't go to my kids' plays or things like that because I'm with clients or, growing the business. And so that feels really sad. And of course, often I might feel guilty. So being able to rectify that it's a choice and that the choice has consequences, I think that's a continued process.
Yeah, and coming to when we talk about the guilt, like mom's guilt, because for every guest I interview, we always talk about this mom's guilt. So for you as a therapist, how do you help yourself? Because you say that at times you're struggling with your business. Should you spend time with your business or spend time with your children? So how do you help yourself, or how do you overcome this mom's guilt?
I think twofold. One is, I want to show my children a role model of somebody who is expressed and complex and empowered in her experiences. And for me, being an entrepreneur is part of that. Because I want to show them that they can do anything that they want, and that they can have successful careers and be wonderful parents if that's what they choose. And the other thing that helps me is that I know that my kids are so well loved and supported. They have other people in their life loving them so much and that are there for them when I can't be. So that really helps as well.
Wow, I like the part when you talk about being role model, because being an entrepreneur, you show a lot of, I would say, qualities. For example, being resilient, being disciplined, being compassionate. I guess all these values really set you for a good role model. And also you talk about there are also other people that are loving them other than you. They are all in place. For example, they are maybe their aunts, their uncles, your in-laws, and all of them. They are there to really support them and love them, so that they will have all the love, not just from mommy's love. There's still other love that they could receive and embrace it, and they can grow up being better children, or even being better adults in the future. So this question I ask every guest, right? So what if you are not a mom? Would you be doing what you're doing now? Because you started this healing journey because you became a mom, your health and all that stuff. So what if you're not a mom? What would you be doing, and how would your life be?
I think I would still have a version of this business and this vocation, but it might look a little different. It would probably be a lot more international. So I think if I didn't have children, I would be doing a lot of traveling. Of course, not now through the pandemic, but if there was no children and no pandemic, then I think there would be a lot more traveling. So I'd probably travel around and teach. But I still hope to do that more when the world changes. So I don't know if it would be any different. Maybe just different shades or different percentages of time.
Definitely. If let's say you're not mom, you might spend 100% of your time really into this journey or in this healing business. So good. Just now when you talk about like it being international, right? So for mothers like you, in order to build the business to international, what do you think that is the quality that you need to bring it international?
You know, technology is so good now, right? We could be in any country in the world having this conversation and broadcasting it to all around the world. So I think businesses are international now because, and particularly through the last couple of years, it's caused us all to merge. So I think perhaps that's a question that would have been more difficult to answer a couple of years ago. But for now, we are international and no one's been able to travel. So we're just working it out. So I think to be international doesn't necessarily mean you have to travel these days. So I think it's very fun to travel.
I think you are right, because if it's much earlier, maybe 5 years ago, this question might be hard for everyone to answer. But it's ever since the pandemic, everybody work from home, everybody embracing technology. Like even my dad and my mom, they know about Zoom. So that will be where I see that mothers, instead of doing a localized business, in fact, they should do an international business. Especially for Singapore moms, where we are bilingual, most of us are bilingual, or we are really good with English, educated, we are able to make it an international business. So and at the same time, just now you mentioned about because you were in Singapore, I believe the infrastructure in Singapore allows you to do that, because from what I heard from my friends from overseas, our broadband, our bandwidth, our internet speed is much stable, much faster. Because like for Malaysia, a lot of my friends, they always got cut off. I'm not so sure about Australia. But so far, our internet connection, our infrastructure, even the cost of all this technology is still much affordable, even for a mobile phone. Our telco plans are still much affordable. So what would you think that if are the common struggles and challenges for mothers to start business, especially for you? What are the common challenges and struggles?
I mean, I think splitting our time and learning how much do I put to the business, how much do I put to the kids, how much do I put to me is really important. I think that can be a struggle to find the ratio of time and balance. And the other thing that I think can be a struggle is support, because if we want to go off and spend a lot of time and energy on our career, we need other people around who are going to support not only our children but us too. And I think when we don't have that, that can be really hard. And as an expat mompreneur, I do find that hard because I have my kids, their dad is an amazing support to them, but I don't have the in-laws and the parents and the aunties and uncles here, so that can be quite hard. I feel really lucky that I have an amazing helper. She's my right hand, and I couldn't exist without her. And I have an amazing team at work, and I have a handful of really good friends, but not having those roots and support systems can be quite hard.
I believe that because today's topic is about mental health, motherhood, and me. So we have covered like the mental health part, the trauma part, and why is it needed now, and also motherhood. We talked about it just now, and me, because I find this topic amazing when we kind of have this when you give me this topic to talk about, because a lot of time I realize that mothers always forget about themselves. They always place themselves, I do not know where, always place their kids as priority. So what do you think that the reason, what will you think will be the reason why mother always place themselves last, or even sometimes they don't even care for themselves?
You know, I think when we have children, it's a natural human instinct to orient to the children. So the child is of us, and then it's here in this world, and we're naturally going to orient to it. And our job is to make sure that little human is alive. And certainly as a first-time mum, that can feel quite overwhelming and intense. And I think many of us just stay there. So it's like we leave ourselves and we orient to our child. And particularly if we don't have really good family support, we have to. That little child needs us all the time. You know, not so long ago, we did live in villages and communities, similar to what your last guest was talking about, where there would be multiple families together.
Yeah.
And so there would be more opportunity to look after ourselves, but the modern day family doesn't necessarily support or allow that in the same way. So it's very hard for mothers to look after themselves. But we have to adapt within the paradigm that we live and exist in. And so I think for mothers, learning that actually looking after ourselves first supports us to be better mothers and better entrepreneurs is really important. But we've got to work through the practicality of needing to look after our children, and B, I guess what we've learnt. And the picture of modern motherhood is that we can do it all. And the picture of a mompreneur is that we're these superstars, and we're not. And we can only be superstars if we look after ourselves. And often what we are talking about for also the guilt comes up when we do that. When my kids were really young, like I mentioned, I got very, very sick and I was forced to look after myself. So it was all about the babies. And I got sick. So I had to learn, actually I need to accept help. I need to let other people chip in and look after them or bring a meal and care for myself. And I wish that it hadn't got to that point for me to learn that lesson. But that really shifted the way I exist and the way I care for myself. So now I have zero problem taking myself off to exercise or to the beach for a walk or to meditate and let the kids be cared for by someone else. So to me, that was a very transformational lesson.
Yeah, when you say that, that just reminded me of my wife. She's going through that process, but it took her about 8 years to really accept that she can trust me, can trust her other family members to really take care of our daughter, so that she can go for her holiday, she can go for her me time, she can still do what she used to do with her friends and all that stuff. But sometimes, like you mentioned, the mom's guilt is really, I would not say it's really the biggest challenge. This is what I hear, and with a lot of my good friends who are mothers also, they're ladies, they're females, I see that they are always very concerned that I'm the only one that I can help my children. I'm the only person that know what they want and all that stuff. So that really comes from the mom's guilt, or it could be when we talk about childhood upbringing. Could it bring it back because you're a trauma therapist? So could it be because of the upbringing? That's why they felt that they need to be a better parent. Is there any association to that?
It can be. So it sounds like what you're talking about is fear. If I leave my baby with someone else, something bad will happen. So that fear comes from somewhere. Either they've been taught that is true, or it may be that that's happened to them, that they haven't really been safe. Something bad's happened when they're young. And so that's something common that I see. I work quite a lot with mothers that are kind of processing their early life trauma. And interestingly, it's very common when a woman becomes a mother that her childhood trauma will surface to be healed. Because all of a sudden, what happens when we go through trauma when we're young is that we develop all of these coping and survival mechanisms to protect ourselves, and we kind of unconsciously hide the trauma inside of us. So we're looking after our inner child, and when our baby is born and all our energy goes to the baby, it's like all of a sudden our inner child is exposed, and so sometimes the trauma starts surfacing. So if there have been experiences of either neglect or abandonment or abuse, they can start rushing up to the surface. And if we don't take time to heal and make sense of them, one of the most common manifestations is anxiety around the baby. And the other very common manifestation is anger outbursts, just uncontrollable, unexplainable anger outbursts. So yeah, this is something that's very prevalent. motherhood is one of the most common things to trigger unprocessed childhood trauma for women.
I because when I was working for Motherhood magazine, I need to consume the content, and this thing is one of the thing that really trigger that. And you talk about the anxiety, and we often hear like mother and child always have this separation anxiety, which will trigger, and it's not just it's not just the mom, the child will have this separation anxiety, right? Does children have that, like baby, do they have that, or is all coming from the parent themselves?
I think it's dynamic. So certainly the mother's nervous system has an effect on the child's nervous system. So when a baby is born, it's reading and responding to its mother. So whether or not a child has separation anxiety is going to depend on how safe it feels in connection and out of connection. And there is going to be a big impact from the mother, but also other circumstances within the little baby's world, whatever those might be.
I think this is something very deep, and definitely if any mother that's tuning in or watching the replay, if you guys are interested, you can always reach out to Natalia. And also at the same time, I see that we have Jin Ng. Jin Ng is in, and Shu Yan is in. Thanks, Jin. So they're tuning in. So if you guys have any question, you can always post it in the chat, and later on, if you still have time, I can post it out to Natalia. If not, Natalia can always come back to the chat and reply them accordingly. So when we talk about the challenges and the struggle, so what is your biggest challenge as a mompreneur? Like for you, what is the biggest challenge so far for you?
I mean, I think it is the guilt. For example,
it's always there, is it?
Yeah, well, it's not always there. It's actually very rarely there. But occasionally my daughter will say, "Oh, you never come to pick me up at school," something like that, or the other mummies do this and A, B, C, D. And I'm like, have to tell her, well, mummy has a job, mummy runs a business, and sorry. And so having those interactions and knowing that my kids feel it, that feels hard.
Yeah, so then and that will be when because you know the techniques and ways for you to heal it, right? So that's why it's also important for a lot of mothers to learn all this technique, all these ways to really help themselves, because motherhood is a journey, right? It's like a marathon, or it's a never-ending marathon. Even your kid, even my daughter now, she's 12, but I'm still, as a parent, even my wife, she's still worried. She's still worried that she has no food, no drink, no water, and a lot of stuff, even to this age. So I guess this is an ongoing journey, and if they know what are the ways and technique, they will be able to overcome this. Definitely, it will be useful for them. So time really flies, and maybe you can share with the audience how can they get connected with you, because like a lot of things you talk about, the mom's guilt, about being a role model, having the anxiety. Definitely there are a lot of audience, or even a lot of mothers, they do not know how to, especially for mompreneur, because you are juggling both business. Like you mentioned in the beginning, like business is like your baby, and your child is still also like your baby. So it's very hard for you to separate them together. So any maybe you can share with the audience how can they get connected with you, and how they can get access to you.
Sure. The best two ways are via LinkedIn and Instagram. So on LinkedIn, you can just find me, Natalia Rachel, and on Instagram, my handle is at Natalia_Rachel_change, and I post lots of content on there about healing from trauma and transformation.
Thank you, Natalia. And for those who are watching and tuning in, you can go to the description. I've already included it in. If not, later on I will also put in the chat. Okay. So now is also the time for you to post the question of the day out to the audience and also to the next guest. So Natalia, what would be your question of the day? It could be anything revolving around what we are talking about today, or it could be something that is about motherhood. It could be about your business. It could be anything that you're passionate about. What would be your question of the day?
My question of the day is, if you were going to choose 3 ways to self-care, what would they be?
Okay, so can you repeat again? So slowly, so I can write it down.
If you were going to choose 3 ways to self-care,
Going to choose 3 ways
to self-care,
to self-care.
what would they be?
Okay, what would they be? Okay, so let me repeat again. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you ever going to choose 3 ways to self-care, what would they be? Okay, so this question of the day goes out to the audience and also to the next guest. So last but not least, Natalia, what would be your last advice for the mothers who are sitting on the fence thinking whether they should step into entrepreneurship or not? So what would be your last advice?
If you're considering stepping into entrepreneurship, I think choosing to be very intentional around where you put your time and energy, and knowing that a lot of it has to go here to make it work is really important.
Wow. Thank you, Natalia, for your last advice to all the moms. For those who are watching the replay, you can, I hope you guys have all these golden nuggets and all the gems that Natalia have shared with you. If you guys would want to find out more about trauma, about how to overcome your guilt, you can always reach out to Natalia Rachel on LinkedIn or even in Instagram. You can also check out the link in the description. So last but not least, thank you very much, Natalia, for making time. I know it's been a long day for you, and thanks for accepting my invitation to share about this space to create awareness. And especially this month, yesterday was the mental health awareness day. So thanks a lot for coming on to the show. I didn't realize that it's just one day after that. So thank you very much and appreciate your time. So I'm Kenneth here signing off with Natalia. Thank you guys for watching Mompreneur Space live show podcast, and I will see you guys next week. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Natalia. Thank you. Bye bye.